TheRantCast. Yeah. All right. We're back on the Rantcast. And right now, Strange Bus isn't with me, and nothing that makes me more angry at the time that I'm trying to start the Rantcast when I have technical issues with my internet. So, anyway, I hope you can all hear me here on the Rantcast. Episode 16. Let me get rid of these screens. And like I said, unfortunately, Strange Bus couldn't make it. But hey, the lines are open. If you want to join me in the Quest Talk on HeroQuest Fans Discord, I'd be happy to have you. So at the bottom of the screen there, we'll be ranting about some topics tonight, whatever strikes our fancy. Thanks, Luca Rocks. Thanks, Jacer. Some of you I can't actually see. I know you're there. I just can't see you in the stream. That's weird. Yeah, all kinds of weirdness tonight. So let's see. Yeah, it says there's nobody in the chat. It's weird. It's weird. But thank you for joining us on the TheRantCastPodcast. Yeah. See, and you can join us there. I'll just go ahead and paste it in the chat again. For those joining us live on Twitch. Well, I can see you, Luca Rocks, but according to all my screens, you don't exist. And that's not right. Of course you exist. So I don't know why. It's not showing me any of the people that are here. I can just, when you type, I can see it, and that's it. So, yeah, welcome to episode 16, tentatively titled Don't Join, Don't Join Them, something along those lines. We're just thinking of the frustration we're having with the franchises owned and controlled by Disney. Yeah, Twitch is being weird. We did our final play test today, actually, with a group of players. It was pretty awesome. So now my Thursdays are going to be freed up. So I could do something else on Thursday or just kind of rest up because the plan is moving forward Fridays on HeroQuest Fans. I will be doing 2 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. I will be doing Mage of the Mirror. And so tomorrow we're doing Mage of the Mirror. And Saturday, well, that'll Luca Rocks. When will we hear about the game you were testing? That'll be up to the author. The author is updating the notes. As soon as he decides to release that information, we're not going to release it before he does. But I suspect that you and the people on Yield In will probably be the first to know about what's going on. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool, I think. And you know how it is with any fan project. You put your work out there, and then people go, yeah, that was pretty good and all, but if you just make a little tweak here and a little tweak there, and then now it's perfect. And then somebody else will say, well, yeah, I hear what you're saying with those tweaks, but like I'm gonna take it and over here and make a little change here and a little changes there, and now it's perfect. So that's the HeroQuest fans community, not just us, but a community wide in a nutshell. Everybody tweaks and remixes everybody else's stuff and makes it their own. That's just how it is. But you still try to start with the best base that you can, you know. So okay, I've got this extra window because we don't actually have any guests at the moment, but let me just hop into Quest Talk Discord. So right now it's just me, glitches. We'll just edit all that out. Okay, yep. So I'm really pleased with the fact that we have 2 viewers now. Okay, I can see 2 viewers, 19 followers. We're growing steadily, slowly but surely. Dying to know what you thought of the Monk playtest. Okay, yeah. So we've got HeroQuest and we've got Star Wars, our perennial topics tonight. It'd be nice to have some guests. If not, I mean, I'll just say what I'm going to say tonight, and then we can call it good. And tomorrow we'll just do what we do with Mage of the Mirror. And Saturday, stream is canceled because I'm doing family stuff, so I won't be doing Rise of the Dread Moon this Saturday. on HeroQuest fans, but next week it's open. It's open for business. So, yeah, HeroQuest. So we did our own little play test, and Jacer was our guinea pig. Uh, we're grateful to him that he chose to take that role of the wandering monk. We were using this fine fellow, as a proxy. So this is Reaper Bones, Brother Stone. So I like him because he's a little ambiguous. Like he could be like an Eastern monk, or he could be a Western monk. So he's got some Friar Tuck vibes, but also some, Bodhi vibes, Bodhi vibes. So anyway, cool looking guy, and just about the right size and color after a little bit of Krylon spray paint. And of course, like I was just rushing to get all this done. I was printing stuff out at the print shop. I was late for the stream. I was spray painting this guy out in the sun. I had like a little dust off thing. I was trying to like dry him off quicker, and I was spraying like matte varnish on him to try to get him done. So, but it turned out okay because I didn't want him like getting paint or sticky tackiness on anything. So we also printed out these little cards. Look how cute these are. So I just renamed these. I mean, just kind of as an in joke, and also the fact that I thought, well, maybe it sounds a little more Western. So I used some images that were already there from the photographs, the screen captures we'd seen, and then the ones that I couldn't get a good image of, I just threw something from the internet on. And so, see, this is just paper. But the point is, you could easily display all of the elements that the Wandering Monk character has. Flip them over, turn them so when they're used. So we'd have to use the air, earth, and water in order to trigger fire. So we played Nightfall, and we didn't actually get it finished. As you know, my quests tend to go longer, especially when we have like more than the originally intended allotment of heroes. We were playing with 5 heroes, and the monk was going last. And I thought, I mean, Jacer can get in here and tell you what he thought of it, but I thought it was interesting because he wasn't like underpowered, but he wasn't overpowered either. I mean, he only got fire, I think, one time, and we were maybe like halfway through the quest, I'm guessing, because we got to finish it up, not this Saturday, but the Saturday after, for Nightfall, the prequel to Rise of the Dread Moon, because we're going to be doing Fridays, Mage of the Mirror, Saturdays, Rise of the Dread Moon, just like that, as much as we can. But anyway, yeah, he got fire one time and just absolutely annihilated a monster. But I mean, they were just fighting like low level monsters, so he didn't seem like he had much competition. But at the same time, I mean, he took a little bit of damage. I don't know. It seemed interesting. You were always thinking about, hey, Jacer. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Jacer's here. Elverg is here. Jacer says, yeah, about that. Elverg says it feels fairly balanced. How powerful it plays out just depends on the quest overall. So I was hearing from you guys that my volume is too low. So let me just try to update that. If you guys want to talk, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Hop on to the HeroQuest fans Discord and go into the voice channel called Quest Talk. If you're watching this live on Twitch, we'd be happy to have you. You can broadcast your voice with the rest of us. And I would be honored to have you as my guests. So Verg, Jacer, whoever else wants to join in, please feel free. And I'm going to just see if I can up my volume here a little bit. I don't want it to be completely overwhelming. Okay, so it's at 200% now. How's that? Jacer says it either takes 2 or 3 turns to get fire going. Elverg says if there's not a lot of monsters or if there are additional heroes, the number of actions is going to be limited. Yeah. The thing is, I mean, I could strictly enforce the idea that every player controls just one character, but I don't know. The way it usually ends up is we divide up the 4, and then new people join and don't want to control those heroes. They want to control their own. So we just kind of do what we do. Voice is fine. Thank you, Luca Rocks. Yeah. So it's all in good fun. But yeah, I had a good time watching him do his thing and just kind of see how it plays out. Because as you know, we use a lot of house rules when we play HeroQuest. So we've got the wrestling moves when you get 3 or more white shields. We've got the blind jumping over traps and double jumping, which doesn't work most of the time. So it's just kind of like an extra, like, at least you feel like you've got a chance. And then of course the main thing is the interaction with people buying, the combat cards, like these, and the threat cards, the Zargon deck, like these, and of course the potions, which we love, things like that. Luca Rock says, "We're betting Monk will be out in time for the holiday by accident, probably." Well, yeah, the official release date is still January 15th, but will it be good like that? I mean, Rise of the Dread Moon did not release early. I mean, yes, some people got it early and unboxed it early, but I mean, it wasn't generally available like Mage of the Mirror and Frozen Horror, where just anybody could just order it from Amazon and get it. Like, only a couple people seemed to get it. Like, they kept it under wraps pretty well. I mean, I'm certainly happy to get it sooner if it comes out sooner. But yeah, seems illogical to not have something for the holidays. Yeah. I mean, even though it's a small package, I mean, $16, but it's a stocking stuffer. I mean, think about those boxes. Those are just the right size to stuff into a big woolen sock, hung by the fire with care. It's a perfect, like, Christmas gift, holiday gift. Exactly. Yeah. You get a wandering monk, add it to your adventure. Why not? Yeah. But, that's how it goes. I mean, when they did the retail release for HeroQuest, it was out in October. And then most people probably didn't get it until December or January. But still, it was right around that time. You either got it for Christmas, or after Christmas is over, you're like, well, I didn't get everything I wanted. I'm just going to get this one thing for myself or for my family or whatever. So that makes sense. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but there you're getting a big game for $135 or $125, whatever. That's a little pricier than just 15, $16. That's a lot easier. I mean, there are people who look at that and go, wait a minute, it's only 2 figures and it's the same character twice for $16. That seems like a lot. Like, you can buy these figures for like $3 unpainted. And I mean, these aren't painted either, these HeroQuest figures. I mean, yes, you get the cards, but maybe if a person doesn't understand what it is that they're buying, like, oh, it's just an extra hero. Like, so what? Like, what's good about him? So that hype has to kind of sell it, I think. So it was pointed out to me that Polygon seems to get like these stories like earliest, as if maybe Hasbro Avalon Hill has kind of some special deal with them. Like, are they Access Media? Do they get exclusives? So I don't know. I don't care. But at the same time, it's like, if that's true, I guess, you watch that space to see if they're going to release something. Because really, those leaks like we get seem to be pretty rare. Like where those 2 game shops were just like, oh yeah, this is what we're getting. All right, welcome once again to the Rantcast. This is really getting old. I'm having all kinds of issues with Twitch. What's wrong with you, Twitch? Shout out to Karl Casey at White Bat Audio for the music. And we're talking about HeroQuest, of course. I'm trying to do a power hour here without Strange Bus. Shout out to Strange Bus. Love you, man. We'll catch you next time. He had a family thing. So the Wandering Monk. I'm pretty interested in this character. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be good. So far in our playtest, I think we've enjoyed the character. These are just like fan-made. This is not the official. This is how we proxied the character in our game. Using him as a 5th hero for Nightfall for Rise of the Dread Moon. I'd like to get Jacer in here to hear his thoughts, but if he can't make it, that's fine. Yeah, it puts me in a real vendetta kind of mood. Oh, speaking of vendetta kind of moods, so I just was having a little bit of fun earlier. You know, we've got Dune coming up pretty soon this year with Christopher Walken as the Emperor.
Deep inside another dimension, face battling barbarians and evil magic on a quest for adventure in a maze of monsters. This is HeroQuest, the fantasy adventure game where winning means mastering the art of combat and magic. Once you get into it, you'll never be the same.
So early auditions, you know, before Christopher Lee got the part, not many people realized that some other actors tried out.
Deep inside another dimension, to face battling barbarians and evil magic on a quest for adventure in a maze of monsters. This is HeroQuest, the fantasy adventure game, where winning means mastering the art of combat, magic. Once you get into it, you'll never be the same.
Against the Ogre Horde, the discussion was, and they pretty much told us that yes, of course it's coming out. Of course it is. Even if they hadn't said that, you know, in so many words with the concept art, even if they hadn't, you know, dodged around the questions, like we knew it was coming out. But what we gathered from the Encarmine interview is there's many possible ways they could convert against the Ogre Horde into the new format, but what's probably just going to do is expand it into 10 quests and then pad out the box with extras to the point where it looks more like the Frozen Horror or the Mage of the Mirror boxes, you know, with extra stuff. And it's like, that's cool. And seriously, you know, if they're going to be releasing Prophecy of Telor, which of course they are, and Spirit Queen's Torment, which of course they are, which means we get the Bard, they're going to have ample opportunity to give us all those mythic tier stretch goal extras, except the ones that they said that they're not going to give us. So they're not going to give us Venom, Joe's Dragon. They're not going to give us Sir Ragnar, Prisoner. They're not going to give us the Witch Lord in that form. But all the other stuff is up for grabs. So pretty much I would expect those to be in those boxes in some form or fashion. You know, maybe the plastic will be a different color. Maybe the sculpt will be slightly different, but it'll probably be there. Or maybe it'll be exactly the same. And I'm sure they'll have the corrections on the pages that everybody pointed out. They'll have the cards that are called for but not present in there. They'll have the, you know, the entrance and exit doors. But they'll have enough stuff that it'll feel like the same level of, I guess, completeness as you got from Keller's Keep Return of the Witch Lord for those boxes. And then against the Ogre Horde is going to be like the bigger box. So it'll feel like you have all that stuff. And it sounds like, I mean, hopefully they're talking to the European players to get their take on things. But they're going to be filling it out with the corrections and updates that fans thought of. You know, kind of going along that same trajectory. When they pad out the quests, I mean, what will those new quests be? Maybe they could be quests where you find Ogre Mercenaries, maybe. Or maybe the final battle isn't just kind of so anticlimactic. Maybe there's more battles afterwards. Or maybe they just use what was released back in 1990 as just kind of a rough outline. And go from there. And just give us something new. Because I think the point is there was less nostalgia for against the Ogre Horde in a similar way that Frozen Horror and Mage of the Mirror were packs that people wanted, but it wasn't such a, they didn't have such a mandate from the fans to say don't change anything. You owe us, you know, that you need to just release it as is. Like Keller's Keep, Return of the Witch Lord, the game system. I mean, those are pretty much like keep it as it is. This is just about perfect. Don't ruin people's memories. But with these other expansions, it's like fewer people had them. They had some problems, and so it's like, yeah, go ahead, do some tweaks, do some changes, make it better, you know. And yeah, not everybody's going to be happy, but they're going for the larger audience, which makes sense. You know, the larger audience that wants something playable out of the box without having to like rewrite it or search online for the fixes. Because people who don't like the fixes or want to play it raw, you know, as it originally was, can still do that easily enough. But that's a smaller group of people than those who just want to kind of take it out of the box and have it be more or less already playable, ready to go. So I get that. That makes sense. And so I would not expect Against the Ogre Horde to be exactly like the version that you find on HeroQuest by Phoenix.Eulden.com, where he just basically just straight up converted it to the North American rules. I mean, there was a couple of typos in there too, but I mean, that happens. Like, I know how it is. You know, you go over it and you go over it and you go over it and you're exhausted and you turn it in and you print it and then you realize the next day that you get it, oh, I misspelled this one word, or I put the comma in the wrong spot, or, you know, I didn't put a space between these two lines and it looks silly. Like, it happens. It happens. But a lot of the mistakes that we found in those like mythic books were the type of mistakes where it's not perfect, but Zargon pretty much 99% knows instantly what it was supposed to be. And he can just make that correction on the fly. It's a little annoying, but he can make that correction, and the players at the table will have no clue because they're not looking at what Zargon is looking at. So an experienced Zargon especially will have no issues. And all these expansions, I mean, yeah, some of them are easier than others, but they all pretty much assume you've played at least a few quests already, which, of course, is not always going to be true. I found, you know, after playing Frozen Horror, starting with the original quest, I mean, if you go back to HeroQuest fans and you watch those original videos, I mean, there's hundreds of hours now probably, but you can watch it all on double speed. You'll see that we started with the Xanon Pass, you know, Quest 1, the solo quest. We tried to play it as it was written in 92, and the Barbarian just kept getting killed. And we implemented a couple of early playtest things, like, we didn't have Avalon Hill's version yet. So we were saying, oh, you could roll to get out of the Yeti hug rather than just having it just continuously kill you. Or saying, oh, you just never get caught in the hug, but just roll it. Rantcast. All right, we're back on the Rantcast, episode 16. Don't join. Apparently, it was self-fulfilling prophecy because we've had so many issues tonight. It's like they're doing maintenance on my internet or something. I don't get it. So shout out to Karl Casey at White Bat Audio for the music. At least we got to listen to some cool tunes. Yeah, my system did a bunch of updates, and then the internet was unstable. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I was talking about HeroQuest, of course. And I was talking about our adventures, doing 10 months of the Frozen Horror, and taking those solo quests and turning them into group quests. But I didn't do a lot of fancy modifications. I just made it with 3 heroes. 2 Guardian Knights and a Barbarian, and it was fun. Took a lot longer. And I have shown in private playtests that it is totally possible to get those solo quests done like in an hour or less, even like 45 minutes. And I'm talking like victory, not total party kill, or one hero gets killed. So it is possible, but I don't know. I just feel like the modifications I make are designed to be more fun. Like, if you want to come at my stream, like if I'm going to self-critique, okay, the critiques I can make of the HeroQuest fans' streams. 1, they're too long, right? They're way too long. Some of that's because I'm waiting for people in the chat to try to, like, cash in stuff. I'm trying to get my notes sorted. I'm trying to read the chat. So there's, like, too much for me to do, because I got to be Zargon, and I got to be the moderator of Twitch. You know, and I got to interact with people in the chat. So ideally, we would have a division of labor. Ideally, I would be doing, or whoever would be doing the GM stuff. Somebody else would be doing the chat. I mean, we have moderators. They would be like making sure people's rewards get noticed like right away. stuff gets responded to in a timely manner, so I'm not like missing it or forgetting whose turn it is because I'm trying to read it at the same time. So that some of that just comes from the fact that we're a smaller podcast, smaller vlog, smaller stream, channel thing. The other thing is the digital stuff is constantly evolving. So when we first started, I was doing everything for everybody. And somebody like Jacer, who's on a phone, it's like, okay, he only has that little small screen, and he's got to like flip between windows. So if he's got Discord going at the same time as Twitch, and he's got to like move it around so he can actually see the screen and see the board. Because the other problem is, and people will say this, is I can't see the whole board. Like, I can only see the part of the board that you're showing on the screen with your cameras. So they're at the mercy of me and my cameras. Whereas if you were sitting with me at a table live playing an actual game in person, you could see the entire board with your face. You could just turn your head, move your eyes around. You could see where everything is. Much easier, right? And I know early on a lot of people said, well, you should use Tabletop Simulator. Tabletop Simulator is so great. It's so great, All you got to do is get a Steam account and spend 25 bucks at the time. Sometimes it goes on sale for less than that. Buy the program, then you got it and get it working and learn the interface, which takes maybe about an hour. And you got to find and install the HeroQuest mod, Master Edition. There's a couple other ones, but that seems to be the most complete one, which is that's not too hard. Now my old system could not handle it. So there was that, and there was a lot of glitches, but then finally there was a patch in Steam, and Tabletop Simulator started working again. The problem with Tabletop Simulator is you've got the same problems as before, in that now you've got to learn the interface, and you may be looking at one corner of the screen, but the person who's streaming the game, you're only seeing their perspective, or you're seeing a lot of like smaller boxes where everybody else's perspectives are. So, you know what I mean? Like the people who are watching the stream are still in the same predicament as before. All it's doing is saying that each individual player who's controlling a hero, so those 4 people or those 5 people, they can see what they're doing. They can look at their own corner of the board if they want to. They can be zooming in and out. They could have a higher or lower resolution. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give each of those players the best experience, within the limits that we've got of playing remotely. So I like the fact that Ribby gave us the mentor bot, which we had a bunch of problems with it recently, but for the most part, it works pretty solid, for hours and hours. We can roll the dice easily. Everyone can access it. It's really simple. It's awesome. It's great. So we can't thank him enough for that. And he designed the DD Dice thing mod for us, which is even better because it's got the sound effects and it's got the motion. But the problem is for somebody who's on a phone like Jacer, he's got to switch through even more programs now to do it, so it's less accessible. And like, remember I was talking about Tabletop Simulator? Tabletop Simulator doesn't work on phones. So that's out. So we were controlling his stuff, like when Strange Bus was being Zargon, we were controlling Jacer's stuff just like any other stream. Now, the thing we did learn was that by using Discord and using a virtual camera, we could actually have like almost no lag. Because before it was like 30 seconds of lag, and I improved my internet. There was 10 seconds of lag between the voice, which was real time, and seeing on the screen what I was doing. So it's like, oh, I'm moving the orc 3 squares to the right. And then you're like, waiting. Oh, there it is. But at least with Discord and me sharing my camera with the group in the Quest Talk, at least the players could see it more or less live. And so people watching on Twitch had a delay. But see, the people on Twitch are still trying to get in on the action because you got to see like, oh, the heroes are getting damaged. I better buy them a potion. Or gee, the heroes are just wandering around unopposed. I need to get some monsters in there, right? Because that's one of the things that's unique about our stream. So that's in our favor, is that we do something that nobody else does, which you guys can do that. You other HeroQuest streamers out there, go ahead, use our system. We don't care. You want to put gold coins and let people buy stuff? Go for it. You have my permission to use it and run ads with it if you want. It's not like we've patented it or anything. Um, I think, as far as I know, though, we were the first ones to do that, where you would use the gold coins to buy stuff to directly influence the quest that we were playing live. Because I think a lot of people play and they just kind of play the game, and you're just chatting with them while it's happening, or you're buying the usual stuff. If you play a little music clip, or somebody drinks water or something like that. Not the same. Speaking of water, got to get a refreshing beverage. Cheers, Dead Gamer. Much better. Yeah. So we have a pretty good time with that system, but at the same time, that system slows the game down. So if you're the type of person that thinks, "Gee, HeroQuest fans is too slow," guess what? That system comes with a cost, because now we're waiting for people to react to things. Kind of like when they did sitcoms, on TV, they tell the joke and then they wait for the audience to laugh. And so everybody's just standing there like morons for a few seconds, just waiting for it to happen. That's what happens. So when you're watching it back on YouTube, you're probably like, why are they taking so long? But that's because we're watching the chat going, okay, is someone going to buy something? Or they did buy something. Let's acknowledge it. Let's now see how it interfaces with the quest. But I like the challenge of that. So maybe I'm having fun, maybe somebody else watching isn't. Then again, I understand there is the appeal of our HeroQuest stream, because you've got people that are painting while it's going on. It's background noise. Somebody's drifting off to bed, while they're hearing us drone on. That's fine. If you're watching and that's what you get out of it, that's cool. You see how we play and you go, yeah, this is what I'm not going to do. Like, it's teaching you, this is what could happen if you play this way. So I'm going to adopt a different style. That's cool too. You don't have to play the same way we do. But if you're going to be part of our game, we want you to be involved. We want you to be part of it. Notice a lot of the house rules we use are not strictly enforced. So when we say you can have unthreatened movement, no monsters on the board, you can move your full movement, a lot of people still roll their dice. It's like, that's okay. Didn't say you had to do the non-roll to move. You're allowed to jump over the squares blindly, whether you detect a trap or not. A lot of people choose not to do that. That's fine. But I'm saying you can. I'm going to allow you to. As when I play as Zargon, I allow you to do that. So that's how I do it. Just like with the cards, I may draw a Zargon card if there's no monsters on the board. Doesn't mean I have to every time. I may decide to do it. And I'll be honest with you, there have been times where it's like I could have played a card to sabotage somebody's move, but the move they did was so cool, I just let it go. I'm just like, I'm just gonna let this play out. This is way better than if I just throw a monkey wrench into it. Other times, that's exactly what I want to do, so I just do it. So you've got a lot of power as the GM, in HeroQuest or any of these other games. So I really enjoy it. Not everybody is going to agree with my style. Not everybody's going to agree with my calls. But for those people, I say learn from us, learn from our mistakes, make your own game, do it your own way. So again, back to the HeroQuest fan stream. What did we learn? Well, the game can be hard to follow if you join in the middle of the stream. You're like, what's happening? I see them moving around the board, but like, is the barbarian about to die? Is the wizard, has he used up all his spells? What's happening? So we had the suggestion. A couple people made it, but I remember Darkhawk especially was like, "Why don't you just put the character sheets on the screen?" Originally, that's what he wanted. Put the virtual character sheets on the screen. And so I was thinking like, okay, we'll have body, mind, attack, defense, and all this stuff. But it was going to take up too much room, and it took too long for me to update it. Now we're still working on possible solutions. We've got a couple people, Ribby and Verg, have some systems they want to show to me. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to look at it. For a while, we started doing a Google Doc. I found that just was very cumbersome to update. I know that the point of the Google Doc is you have lots of people who can access it at once, but I don't know. I don't know. I was just annoyed by it. So maybe that's my problem. But as people suggest new solutions, like, I'm open to it. I'll try your system to see if it works better. And if it does, great. Happy to add it to the stream, and you can see your improvement there. Just like Elviler wanted to give us some quality artwork for the borders. Boom, we started using it. Ribby wanted us to have the virtual dice. Boom, we got it. Stuff like that. So I implemented a really simple system where you just have like the heads, the symbols, like from the companion app of the heroes, and then just a number next to it for their body points. Boom, you can see instantly, oh, the barbarian's at 3. Maybe I should get him a potion, or maybe I should get another monster to kill him off, you know? So little things like that, we learned over the course of a year how to make the stream more interactive, how to make it more accessible, you know? But if you watch some of those earlier streams, or even if you just are a first time viewer, you might think, it could be so much better. Give us your suggestions. I want to improve the stream. And I've also tried using BlueStacks emulator playing the companion app on the screen. Now, the problem with that is I'm still controlling everything because you guys who are playing can't actually. I mean, I was trying to think like I could share my screen and give people control. I mean, it's assuming I trust people not to mess around with my system. You could actually move the characters on the screen in the app. Like move your character. Maybe, but the limitation of the app is that you only have one version of each of the quests. You just have the official quest and that's it. So if you're going to play the Xanon Pass twice, it's going to be the same exact quest both times. Like it hasn't changed. There's no remix button. So that has its limitations. But for people who are playing it for the first time, don't have it memorized, don't care, fine. And the honor system within the app, I mean, we showed you it was possible. Like we had the bard, but we called him the pirate, and we just reskinned all of his abilities, and it was fine. It worked fine. It worked the same way. You can simulate a lot of things just with your honor system. You can house rule a lot of things into the app without it really making, a whole lot of difference. If you want to say that you can attack the monsters at range, you just can. You just do it. And it relies on you to draw a card from the deck, so the deck could be custom. I mean, there's a lot of things like that are pretty easy to do. Now, if you wanted to do like the European rules, there's a couple things that you couldn't do. Like you're supposed to be able to remove traps, like certain traps after they've been sprung in the European version. You're supposed to be able to fix like a pit trap that's already been sprung or a falling block trap. Whereas in the North American version, once those are sprung, they're permanent hazards. It's a permanent block, permanent obstacle to navigate. So that's a little tricky. You could just automatically cast Pass Through Rock on everyone so that they can always pass through the stone block. And you could automatically have everyone succeed when they try to jump over the pit, I suppose. But you have to work around the limitations of the app. You can't move the monsters, although you can move skeletons using the bone wand, but that's the only thing you can do. So the app is kind of interesting. But again, each of these digital solutions to HeroQuest, as opposed to just pointing the camera straight at the board, which is what I like to do, they all have their limitations, but making it easy to see what's going on, having a level of interactivity, having a level of accessibility, all those are attractive. So I'm still on the lookout for new things. Foundry was one that a lot of people told us about. I think it was $50. The GM had to buy it. Not everybody else had to buy it necessarily, but you had to create the worlds yourself. Like it was set up for games like D&D. It wasn't set up for HeroQuest. And I understand there's people that like homebrewed their own stuff, but they didn't share it publicly. So it's like you have to reinvent the wheel. So it's like, I don't want to spend the money and I don't want to have to create it all myself. So it's like if somebody wants to create it and give it to us, I mean, that's cool. I'll be happy to use your system, but that's what's going to have to happen. I mean, for the tabletop simulator stuff, I already had tabletop simulator, so there I didn't have to buy it again. Somebody else had already created the HeroQuest mod, so I didn't have to do that again. I already own HeroQuest, and so since I'm not going to be playing this game with people in person, I mean I do, but it's pretty rare. It's like family gathering or whatever. Um, I've played with I went to a local game shop once with a friend of mine, and we played a game there. That was kind of cool to try that once because I'd never done that before. Taking a game that you own to a game shop, use their free space, and just play. That was pretty cool. But those are few and far between. Those are special occasions. For the most part, if I want to play a weekly game, I have to do it virtually. And so the closest thing to that for me is this, where I get to move the pieces around. And I enjoy that. But I mean, people who join me are just doing it vicariously. They don't get to touch the pieces and move them around. They get to roll virtual dice, tell me what to do, and I move the stuff around on the screen. So, I mean, you could have your own board set up, which a few people have done. Like they have their own board set up and they're following along. That takes a little longer, but it's like how people played chess remotely for years and years and years, decades. People would just play that way. Like, oh, okay, you have your own notation. I once thought about plotting out a grid and having like coordinates. It's much easier to just say, okay, 2 squares to the south, or whatever, or move the orc so he's at the edge of the red room, or move him so he's right in the center of the tomb area, something like that. You just do it like that, and it works out pretty well. But because you're not in person, you're doing it that way, it takes longer. Now, another thing it takes longer is one person controlling multiple heroes, which we do a lot of because it's rare that we have exactly 4 heroes playing a campaign together at the same time, for the whole time. And see, I don't expect people to come on and play for 6 hours. Some people do, most can't. So I'm totally fine with, yeah, somebody jumps in, controls a hero for a while, we go on. That's just kind of how we do it. You know, that to me is a perfectly legit way to play HeroQuest. And as a kid, that's what we did. A lot of times we just had multiple heroes, and a quest is designed for that many. Now, to kind of shift gears a little bit, I do want to talk about Rogar's Hall. So Rogar's Hall has gotten kind of a bad rap. When the HasLab campaign for HeroQuest was going, and Stephen Baker, they're putting his name out there. I actually hadn't heard of Stephen Baker before that campaign. It was just like, oh, who's Stephen Baker? Oh, he's the guy who invented HeroQuest. Oh, that's cool. I mean, that's how it was presented, not by Avalon Hill, but by a lot of other websites. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, this guy, this guy. So you look up the history and you go, okay, well, he didn't single-handedly, make the game, but he had a lead role in it. So I don't know what his role would have been. Would they have called him like project leader or quest writer, or I mean, like who's the equivalent of Stephen Baker in the Avalon Hill group today? Is it in Carmine, Chris Nato, the project leader? Is it somebody like Doug Hopkins who writes like the quests and the rules? Of course, he didn't write all the quests because we know like Tess Hogan wrote the um, Rise of the Dread Moon. But I mean, Doug Hopkins early on, like a lot of those online quests, he wrote those. The Mythic Heroes, he wrote the rules for those heroes, even though other people did the art. Like other people made the cards, other people made the sculptures, but he wrote the rules. So is it the same way? Like was Stephen Baker like writing the quests and the rules, and then other people were making the art? Like Brian Ansell from Games Workshop, like in his team, they were designing the miniatures, and Gary Chalk was doing a lot of the illustrations, and then Les Edwards was doing like the cover art. Is that how it worked? We don't necessarily know all the details of that, but it's kind of interesting to hear that and speculate it. But it's like, okay, Stephen Baker, he's a big guy from the original game. This is cool. He's coming back. He's going to do some work. Does he still have it? And he seemed really nostalgic writing his article about coming back to it after 30 years. And so that was nice, because he's like an old man in the field, so to speak, a elder statesman of gaming. But then he releases Rogar's Hall, and it's a training quest, and people were like, training quest? Wait a minute. This has like more monster body points than most of the game system quests. Like this is harder than the trial. And it even says in the text that it's pretty much designed to like make you fail and like make you humble and teach you about defeat. And I was thinking like this is not right. Like someone wants to play the first quest, like a little kid, 8 years old wants to play, 9 years old wants to play Hero Quest. And it's like, oh, let's play this, Daddy. It's like you play the game, and well, you got smashed, son. You got destroyed. You got crushed. It's like, okay, the kid doesn't want to play now because you're a kid. You're just a sore loser. You haven't learned yet. It's like, oh no, the point was you're free to lose. Like, I don't like this game. Like I could just imagine all these things. So Rogar's Hall did not appear in the companion app, and it was like, well, of course, it's because it wasn't that good. But I'm having second thoughts. I'm reevaluating Rogar's Hall, and I'm thinking, actually, it's not a bad quest. Like, controversial opinion, but you have to rethink it. Don't think of it as my first quest, like this is going to be a replacement for the trial or the. I'm rethinking Rogar's Hall by Stephen Baker. I'm rethinking whether it's a bad quest because I feel like Stephen Baker redeemed himself with Prophecy of Telor. Even though I haven't played it, I was very impressed reading through it because it seemed to have the essence of the original game system, Keller's Keep, Return of the Witch Lord. It seemed to have all this lore and love poured into it, and effort and creativity and interesting little gimmicks in a good way. That's Prophecy of Telor. But what about Rogar's Hall? Was Rogar's Hall a failure? I'm not so sure. Because yes, if you look at it as a training quest, like it says, like this is for little kids who've never played any type of game like this before, and they're going to play HeroQuest for the first time, and they're going to play this and get destroyed, and somehow like be so tough already and resilient that they can just like play it again and have a good time, or they're going to play it once, lose, so it's like, okay, I'm in Charles Xavier's, danger room, and I got beat up by the illusion sentinels, and now I'm going to go fight Magneto for real. It's like, no, that's not going to work. But the lore text, the flavor text of Rogar's Hall says it's a test of the greatest heroes. And if you go back and read the game system or the original HeroQuest, like the mentor's introduction, to the quests and stuff, he keeps talking about, well, if you complete this trial, you'll be on the road to becoming true heroes. Oh, you're not yet true heroes. So it's like all this stuff about how, well, you're not heroes yet. Eventually become heroes, but it takes you a while. By the time you defeated the Witch Lord at the end, you're champions. You're Imperial Knights or your Royal Knights or whatever. Sovereign Knights, they call you in the new version. So you achieve these titles, you achieve this reputation, this greatness. So it seems to me then after that, that's when you should be playing Rogar's Hall. So what I'm trying to say is Stephen Baker's Rogar's Hall, to me, if you treat it as a test of the greatest heroes rather than my first quest, it can work. It's meant to be a supreme challenge for players who have already mastered the game system, possibly also Keller's Keep, Return of the Witch Lord, similar to how the Dark Company was this big, massive, epic challenge. It wasn't meant to be easy. So I think a little bit of tweaking and Rogar's Hall can actually be pretty awesome because it's a test of the greatest heroes. So I think maybe what got muddled in the whole process is it wasn't just Stephen Baker was really rusty. He wanted to make a quest to throw the mentor figure in there, which only people who were buying the Mythic tier would have. I think if he had gone with just that idea of this is a test of the greatest heroes, like in real life, Stephen Baker is coming back to HeroQuest after 30 years, and he's inviting his main target audience, Avalon Hill's main target audience, the players who played Mastered HeroQuest 30 years ago, to come back and have a supreme challenge. I think in that sense, Rogar's Hall can work. So I think if they kind of repackage it that way, it can be a hit and people appreciate it for what it's meant to be, as opposed to you should play this first, then play the trial, then play New Beginnings or whatever, then play the Rescue Sir Ragnar. Like, that doesn't quite work. It's more like you play all the other quests, then you go back and play this one. It's kind of like how George Lucas was always like, well, you should, watch episode 1 first, then episode 2, 3, then watch the original Star Wars. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It's more like the prequels are a flashback that you watch after you know what happens in Star Wars. You know what I mean? Works much better that way. Yeah, speaking of Star Wars, I do want to get to this. Even though Strange Bus isn't here. Shout out to Karl Casey at White Bat Audio. Let me just turn that music down a little bit. Star Wars. Star Wars will never go away. Star Wars will never die. Star Wars will never suck. That's just the truth. And that is because The Star Wars I'm talking about is the original trilogy and some of the expanded universe. I say some of that, and Strange Bus and I go back and forth on this. It's not because I automatically dismiss things out of hand. It's not because I can't tolerate anything that's slightly different from what came first. It's not that. It's that I don't feel. At one time, I felt obligated as a fan. I felt obligated to try to read and watch everything that they were putting out. Sorry, that's just my reminder. I felt obligated as a fan at one point to try to consume all of the expanded universe stuff and try to like make it fit in my mind as one story. Kind of like how Lord of the Rings fans try to take the whole history of Middle Earth and try to put it all together, or some of these other franchises. But I quickly realized that was just not going to happen because I didn't have enough money to like buy all the books. They were coming out with so many and comics and games. I didn't have enough time. And frankly, some of the ones I was reading and playing and watching weren't very good. And it's like I didn't want them to be part of the story. I was like, nah, I'm just going to ignore that one. That one seems dumb. That seems stupid. That doesn't seem like what Luke and Han and Leia and Vader would actually do, in the Star Wars that I know. So I started being more selective. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to see which ones are good and focus on those. But when the prequels were coming out, I had this change of heart. I thought, well, let's go back to what George Lucas wanted. Maybe all these writers that he approved, maybe this was just a cash in. Maybe his ideas are going to be better. This is the OG guy. And kind of like with Rogar's Hall, the OG comes back and he puts something out and you're like, I don't know if I get it. Does this really fit with what I've come to expect? Is this really I mean, you go back and you look at it a different way and go, okay, well, you know what? The prequels have their place. They're not as good as the originals. They're not as timeless. They're not as interesting. I mean, they have their own strengths. Um, and then you go, okay, so fine. George Lucas isn't perfect. Not as all his ideas are great. He was a nice collaboration guy. Again, kind of makes you think of the situation with HeroQuest, how it isn't just one guy's dream and that's it. Like one person makes all the decisions. I mean, Stephen Baker was collaborating with all the people he collaborated with at the time, and with Avalon Hill, it's the same way. I mean, you've got Chris Nato, charge of the project, but I mean, he's not making all the decisions. Like, he's getting feedback, and they're bringing in other artists and writers, and people are working together and doing their thing. At least that's the way they present it to us. So it's not just a case of like one person like lording it over everybody else. And I think even in the case of Star Wars, you could say, well, George Lucas is still he's still delegating authority to people. He's still having people create art, and yeah, he's signing off on it, saying, yeah, out of these 6 designs, that's the one I want, or that's the cut out of all these cuts. So he didn't necessarily do all the work himself, but he's still making the decision. So somebody at the end of the day has to make that decision. But still there's a lot of preparation and a lot of teamwork and collaboration that goes into it. So I think the more people realize that, the better. So it's not just one person's fault. So you could say modern Star Wars, when it sucks, who's to blame? Oh, it's Kathleen Kennedy, or oh, it's whoever the CEO of Disney is. I mean, I don't even remember anymore. I don't even care. It's like that's how much I care about it. So there's so much that goes into that. And so to me, modern Star Wars, like when a new Star Wars thing comes out, I just don't get excited about it. I just I don't care that much because it's not magical to me anymore. It's not, this is must see TV kind of thing. It's just, oh, okay, this is just another franchise among many. It's just like when a sequel to any movie comes out. You go, okay, well, I'll wait for the reviews or I'll wait to see like what my friends who have seen it say because I know what their tastes are. I know how they judge stuff. They're not going to lie to me just to make me feel good or to make it seem like it's a great product or whatever. They're not worried that Disney's going to cut off their access. if they say, something a little too real, too raw about it. So I think when the new Star Wars stuff comes out, at one time there was a version of me who would have said, "Oh, a new part of the canon, great. I just can't wait to incorporate this into this, timeline that I have in my head, as if it were." It's like, nah, that's been shattered a long, long time ago. And it's too bad because I think for a very short time it seemed like it was this magical storyline that was special and was set apart from other franchises. And it's silly to think about it now of how naive that was, but it just kind of seemed that way. It's like, oh yeah, Star Wars is like really, really special, and it was this cultural phenomena, and it's becoming more and more mainstream. More and more people are liking it and watching it and appreciating it, and saying how rich in mythology it is. And it's like, is it really? Is it really that deep? It's really not. I mean, Pulp Fiction, comic books, serials, TV shows from the Saturday morning cartoons. I mean, that's still art. It's still culture. It's still entertaining. But let's not kid ourselves. I mean, it sparks the imagination, which is very powerful. I mean, a lot of people got into filmmaking because of Star Wars, and obviously made a lot of money. It influenced a lot of things, but it's not the end all be all of entertainment. And other entertainment has come out since Star Wars that has surpassed it in some ways. So you could look at Lord of the Rings. You could look at The Matrix. You could look at, um, I don't know. There's just, it's not just Star Wars anymore. I mean, you could say the superhero movies, like even though that's as a genre, that's just blown up and become totally bloated. And I mean, I used to look forward to superhero movies too. Now I just kind of go, I'll wait and see what other people say, before I spend money on it. Cheers, dead gamer. So I guess the shine is gone. The bloom is off the rose, all that sort of thing. I don't just assume that new Star Wars stuff is going to be terrible. I know that people say, like, whenever a new TV show comes out, almost always it's positive. Like, the earlier reviews are positive. So, like, people said that about The Mandalorian. People said that about Obi-Wan Kenobi. People said that about Andor. People said that about Ahsoka. But then you start getting negative reviews, and then you start getting other people saying, well, those are just toxic fans, this is just a backlash, this is review brigading, trying to like basically create a conspiracy theory saying that, well, these are just like bad people that are trying to like sabotage this great thing that's coming out that's going to save Star Wars. And then it's like after a while the dust settles and it's like, yeah, maybe this show wasn't that great after all. I mean, people still like the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. Like, they seem to be still think that that was good, at least compared to what was coming out. But the stuff with the Book of Boba Fett, which I didn't get that far, I didn't watch that. People thought that that wasn't good. And when I say people, I mean like fans online, like the consensus of fans, if you will, not necessarily like top critics or whatever, media people who may or may not be influenced to say it's better than they really think it is. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi, I actually sat through and watched it all, and I guess if I didn't know anything else about Star Wars, I'd think, yeah, it was fine. It was kind of good actually. But knowing what I know about Star Wars, it didn't seem that good. And yes, when you start to pick it apart, there's a lot of silly stuff in it. It kind of just breaks down. The logic of it doesn't really hold up. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you're reading a comic book. Like they come out with a new comic book every month. And so the first issue, it's like, oh, the superhero, he's in danger. Oh no, he's about to, be killed, and there's just no way he can come back from this cliffhanger. And then you got to wait a whole month, and then the new issue comes out, and it's like, oh, this completely contrived, convenient, BS explanation for how he was fine, and then he just keeps on going. And they did the same thing in like the movie serials, like Zorro and Rocket Man, and all these other uh, Commando Cody and all these different ones. It's like, oh, he was in the plane and you see it explode. It's like, okay, he was killed. He's dead. And then in the next episode, they say, well, you didn't see this. And it shows like some extra footage that wasn't there before of him like getting out at the last second before it blows up. It's like, okay, fine. Now the story can move forward. So it felt like, or one of those TV shows where they don't have a plan. Like they make an episode to be really shocking, and then the next episode they haven't written yet, and then they just come up with a contrived excuse, and then it keeps on going. But then when you watch it all in context, it seems really stupid. I've seen this in professional wrestling too. Like they'll have some big storyline, and it's like, where are they going with this? They keep swerving us back and forth and back and forth, and at the end, it's like supposed to all make sense, and you look at it and go, no, wait, no, that doesn't. There's too many places where credibility is just strained to the breaking point. It's very disposable. It's that type of media where you watch it once, like all the way through, and just don't look back, and it seems like great because you enjoyed yourself every step of the way. It's like, okay, that's cool. But with a really good movie or a really good book, I mean, chances are what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to have staying power. Like people read it over and over, they watch it over and over, and it's always good. Or you get something new out of it each time. It's something fun like that has longevity. Like you want to go back to it. Whereas this stuff is like you eat the McDonald's hamburger, you're not gonna like throw it in the microwave and eat it some more. You're gonna be like, oh, this is gross. I don't want this anymore. Now that I look at it, it's disgusting. Like get rid of it. At the time I was having fun, like chomping on this cheeseburger, but now it's just gross. Throw it away. So you go back and you watch Obi-Wan and you're like, this is weird. This doesn't quite like there's too many coincidences. It was the will of the Force. No, it wasn't. It was just bad writing and not having a clear plan and making up as you go along. I mean, you see some of those weaknesses in Lucas's own work, like the big surprises and the big swerves that were added in Empire Strikes Back didn't have a great payoff in Return of the Jedi. I mean, they tried, but it wasn't satisfying for a lot of people. And I can admit that, even though I love Return of the Jedi. And to me, that was Star Wars. That one movie, not the other two, because I'd barely seen them as a kid. It was all just kind of self-contained in Return of the Jedi for me. I can admit that there's problems with it. You know, there's so many retcons. Like you just have to pretend parts of the earlier movies didn't happen or they weren't that important. Just kind of gloss over them, ignore them, forget about them. Again, similar to like pro wrestling storylines, similar to comic books, similar to cartoons and TV shows. Like if you don't go back and scrutinize it, it's like it's not meant to be taken that seriously. But Star Wars has always been presented as this big like cultural myth, this big real important story. Like we need to study this, just like we study like Shakespeare, and it breaks down when you do that. And I think Disney with their creations, it's almost like an AI machine. They're just throwing stuff in there and they're chewing it up and spitting it out. It's like, yeah, this kind of seems like Star Wars, doesn't it? All we did was rearrange the pieces. And it's like they're taking the mistakes that George Lucas made and they're just like repeating them and enlarging them and expanding them. And they could just say, well, we're just copying what, he did. Rantcast. So what I'm trying to say about Star Wars is I think as fans, we took ourselves too seriously. The creators of Star Wars, George Lucas and everyone else, took themselves too seriously. They started to believe their own hype. They started to believe that they could do no wrong. And when they sold it to Disney, Disney was like, oh, all we got to do is just repeat the same stuff that they did, just bigger and louder and more frequently, and it'll be great. And it was for a while, they were coasting on those fumes, but they just didn't know what they were doing. And that's really what it is. And they keep trying to go back and like fix it. But these TV shows, I think they have the same weakness that comic books and pro wrestling and a lot of other, like, I don't know, what am I trying to call it? Not lowbrow media, but like stuff for the masses, like disposable media. It's stuff that's not supposed to be like super, like you're not supposed to take it super seriously. It's like throwaway entertainment. And I think Star Wars, even though it was imitating that kind of throwaway media, those like you're supposed to watch this stuff once and forget about it. Like who cares? It's just something to take up your Saturday, you know. But it was done with a big budget and it was done, you know, in this archival quality stuff that you're supposed to be able to keep forever and you're going to watch it a million times and you're going to show it to your kids and that's like what Star Wars ended up being. And of course, then George Lucas has to keep coming back and like re-editing it, re-editing it, re-editing it. He's never satisfied with it. It's got to keep changing constantly. You know, it's like a you know a video game program that keeps getting updated with patches. You know, constantly. And even though he said George Lucas said, "Oh, this is my definitive vision," you know, this special edition, this is now it's finally done. This is finally what I intended way back in 1976, what I wanted it to be. It's like, yeah, right. Disney buys it. Disney apparently had a stock of his, like Lucas had laid out, apparently he had laid out these updates that he was going to periodically release. Like he was going to have like a new special edition it seemed like he was doing them every 5 to 7 years, like a new special edition, a new edit. Like, oh, well, here's some new, the matte paintings in A New Hope are different now. Or, you know what, the little magnetic thing that Anakin uses in the pod race is now like more detailed. Like he was gonna just keep releasing these like every few years. So I guess his goal was to just like change every frame of the original movie, or just keep it fresh, or to keep people coming back because people had bought into this idea that he is, you know, the auteur. He's the creator of this great, you know, wonderful modern mythology, and so everything he says has to be like the way the story is. Like he has total control and everything. It's just really weird. And then Disney takes that on. And so now they have to keep recreating Star Wars. And then you get into all the politics about it. It's like, oh, it's got to be whatever the new politics are, those have to be incorporated into the story and it has to be relevant to whatever is, you know, on TV and whatever people talking about on Twitter. And it's like, is that really a way to make a timeless story? I mean, I know George Lucas like says stuff like, "Well, I meant this to be about the Vietnam War," but like most people watching Star Wars don't think that. They're not like thinking, "Yeah, this is a really great 30-year conversation about the Vietnam War." It's like, "No, this is like either they people take it as escapist entertainment or they take it as like modern mythology, like saying, "Oh, these are, you know, the values that a culture wants, like having, you know, heroism and teamwork and, you know, the little guy triumphing over diversity over adversity." You have diversity in the story in the sense that you've got, you know, you've got a boy, a girl, in a universe. You know, you've got Chewbacca, who's an alien. You've got, you know, the droids. Like those people are all totally different from one another, but they're coming together in a common cause to defeat the evil empire. The diversity thing is weird because you get like the incredibly diverse empire, even though they're like the space Nazis, but they've got like every race and every gender and creed like within their ranks and in perfect harmony, you know, and they're all evil. So I guess they can all be like anyone can be evil. See, you know, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or black or white, you can be evil, just like the good guys, you know. So it's like okay, fine, you know, everybody gets to get in the casting call, and I guess you know they win points with some ESG thing. I don't know. George Lucas always had politics in his stories, but it wasn't so, I don't know, it wasn't so ham-fisted and over the top. It's like the story itself was the thing. The characters were the thing. It didn't matter if you thought, well, I can transpose the story into modern day politics somehow, or this is about this particular war, or this particular politician. It's just generally speaking, okay, well, wars are bad, but sometimes you got to fight them. Politicians are bad, but there can be some good people that have power that are trying to do the right thing. It's like, okay, some people have power and they abuse it. Some people with gifts don't use them the right way, you know. Sometimes you've got people that don't realize their potential. You know, there's all these universal things. It's not just an American story or a 20th century story or a a male fantasy or whatever. It's not a princess story. You have or a children's story. You have enough stuff within classic Star Wars that most people can watch it with an open mind and enjoy it at some level. Whereas the more modern Star Wars, it's kind of like they've forgotten about that. They've lost that universality, and now they're trying to make it, oh, this is only for this demographic of people, which is a weird thing to make Star Wars into. And so I haven't seen a lot of the newer ones, so I don't know if that's really what's happening or if that's just some people's perception. But it's almost eventually like it sounds like there'll be a version of Star Wars for each like demographic group. So if you are this particular political persuasion and this particular like religious mindset or this particular cultural mindset, this is going to be the Star Wars that you have, and then somebody else has this other Star Wars that's custom made for them. It's like I don't know. That seems weird. It just why not just have a Star Wars for everybody? Because they had that before. What was wrong with that? And I think it's one thing if you want to like cast a wide net and create all these individualized Star Wars stories like in the form of like novels or comics or even video games. But when you're putting out like big screen movies or even these big budget TV shows, it seems like the wrong place to do that. Now, I wish we could talk intelligently about Ahsoka. I've only seen the trailers. I had no desire to watch it. But from what I've heard people say is that it's it's just Disney trying to like recreate everything in Star Wars just like they're doing with the live action remakes of the animated shows. So Ahsoka is them taking Rebels, which is an animated show for kids primarily, and turning it into a live action show. So I guess on the one hand they're replacing Rebels with that, or they're assuming that all that goodwill that was built up with the fans of that show and all the lore and the character development and storylines and all that, you're just supposed to assume all that and then watch the show and go, "Oh, I can't believe I get to see this character and this character." When if you haven't seen that, you're going to be like lost. Like, wait a minute, why am I supposed to care about this person? Why is everybody cheering when this guy comes on who I've never seen wrestle before? Like that sort of thing. Because you go to a wrestling show and somebody comes out and they're like, "Yeah!" It's like he hasn't done anything yet. Like what? Like you're a plant. You're part of the show. You're pretend. You're fake. It's like no, no, no. Let's see what this guy can do. Oh, now we'll cheer for him, or now we'll boo him because he's doing bad things, so he's a bad guy. It's like oh no, we just know that he's supposed to be this. So I don't know. I just don't want to waste my time with this show. But I mean, I forced myself to watch Obi-Wan. I forced myself to watch the first two seasons of Mandalorian. I forced myself to watch 4 episodes, which is what I said I would do. 4 episodes of Andor, and it wasn't like horrible, but it didn't feel like Star Wars, and I didn't really care to continue, so I didn't. Obi-Wan was kind of clunky, kind of McClunky, but looking back, it felt much more like that episodic thing where it was swerving you from one episode to the next, but it was silly. I mean, yeah, the silly things that people pointed out were stupid, like multiple people getting stabbed through the chest with a lightsaber and surviving. It's like, oh no, they died. No, they didn't. And the whole thing with little Princess Leia, I mean, it was cute, but it just felt like a made for TV like after school special where the adults are all acting goofy when the kids are around because they're a kid, and they only get serious after she leaves. And I don't know. I A lot of the stories that I feel that Disney put on the big screen or on the small screen for the TV show, those plot lines and characters would have worked better in a video game or in a novel or a comic. Because I feel like, especially in the case of a video game, the best video games are the ones that tell a quasi original story, but really is just a vehicle to put you, the player, into the story you remember. So maybe you're not Luke Skywalker, you're not Han Solo, you're not Dash Rendar, but you're Kyle Katarn, who is kind of a character that has qualities of some of those other characters so that you can do some of the same things and kind of feel like you're your own person and yet you're that character, but you're not hemmed into this. Oh, only Luke Skywalker did this, and only Luke Skywalker was here. He wasn't over here. So you're more free to explore that. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, I'm doing the same sort of stuff I remember him doing in the movie, and maybe some other stuff too. Make it your own. Make it your own adventure. You're the star. I think that works in video games. So you could have a character who is a Vader wannabe, or a Palpatine wannabe, or a Yoda wannabe, or oh, it's a super weapon similar to the Death Star. But when you put it in a movie, it feels cheap. It feels like just a cop out. It feels like a rehash. It feels like they have no originality. They're just making a big budget remake and pretending it's a sequel or a prequel. And yet, I suppose they make a movie, they can sell it to the whole world, make it seem really amazing, and make a whole bunch of money off of it. But from what I understand, Disney has lost a lot of money on these movies, or they haven't made as much money as they've wanted. And every time they have to go back and re-edit, you hear about them re-editing these movies like over and over, and like firing people and starting over and doing all this just crazy stuff. And it's like, how is that sustainable? So it seems like they've scaled back. At first, we were getting a new movie from Star Wars every year. Then they were just putting all their energy into these TV shows, these Disney Plus TV shows. But they keep like announcing these projects and then canceling them or delaying them. And you can't blame it all on COVID either. You can't blame it on the fans because a lot of the controversies, it seems like they create themselves. Like they preemptively say a bunch of stuff like, "Oh, if you don't like this show, you must be, bigoted somehow, or you must be part of some conspiracy." And it's like, why are you saying that right away? Like to preempt it, like, as if it's bad and people are going to complain. You can go, "Oh, look, just before you do anything, we're going to dismiss these people out of hand because they're crazy and bad people, so you can't trust them." It's like, I don't know. It seems a little too defensive. So you get those little impressions. It's like, and then you watch it for yourself and go, it wasn't really that great. So what were they so afraid of? But there's so much money tied up in Star Wars. So I hate all that stuff. I hate all that nonsense, all that drama. Like, I don't want to hear about, people getting into fights on Twitter. Like, I don't want to hear about some celebrity having a scandal. Like, I don't want to hear about some director like bashing fans. Like, I don't want to hear that. That doesn't make your product look more attractive. I'd rather just hear that you're making a show, a movie. I don't care what the critics say about it. I'll check it out for myself. I'll decide if it's good or not. And I have a baseline understanding of what Star Wars is because you've had all these movies and everything else before to compare it to. So I will judge it based on that stuff. And if you use the Star Wars name, you can expect that to happen. And I think if you're Disney and you're promoting this stuff not as, well, this is a new story in the Star Wars universe, or this is a what if, or this is an alternate universe, or this is a new, take on it or whatever. If you keep billing it as this is the gap filler, this is the sequel, this is the prequel, you're already setting up the audience to judge it based on its place in the universe. So I think their entire strategy has been wrong from the beginning because they want to do something different, but they want to do the same thing that they've always done. They want to not have it be judged on the standards of the previous stuff, and yet they're trying to improve upon or replace or change what's already come before. And they're trying to like appeal to the nostalgia, but then ignore the comparisons that are going to come from comparing it to the nostalgic stuff. So they just they're just all over the place with Star Wars. So I don't know. I mean, there's generic sci-fi out there, or non franchise sci-fi, one-off stories that can be enjoyable, that can be interesting, that can be fun. I just I'd rather just if we had the choice between bad Star Wars and no Star Wars, I'd rather just have no Star Wars. Like, don't make any new Star Wars if you're just gonna screw it up. But I don't know. I haven't seen Ahsoka. Maybe Ahsoka is a great show. Who knows? But they've kind of lost me. And yes, they started to lose me a long time ago. I think my faith, what little I had of it with Disney, was completely shattered when The Last Jedi came out. I mean, I was kind of cautious when The Force Awakens came out. I was not like all these other people who were saying, "Oh, it was the greatest thing ever." That it replaced the prequels. I didn't think the prequels were that bad. I did not bash them as much as so many other people did. Mostly for me, it was Episode One. Episode One was a problem. I admitted that the problems people pointed out with the other two prequels were true. Like, there were some breaks in the continuity where it didn't quite match up. If you watch the prequels after you watch the original trilogy or the other way around, you'll notice that like everything Obi-Wan says about like the Clone Wars and the Old Republic, all that, and the Jedi Order, like all that stuff in light of the prequels is wrong. Like there's something wrong with everything he says. And so you're supposed to be like, okay, so he's an unreliable character. His memory is off. He's lying. It taints like idealized versions of her. I don't know if that's true or not. The Mary Sue, the dreaded Mary Sue. What is that? Or the Gary Stew? It's the idea that, you always have to explain it, right? But people get it wrong. It's where you create an idealized version of yourself and you insert that as a character into the story. And usually it's like a story that, like a fan fiction. So it's not that you created it from scratch. It's that it's like, oh, here's Star Wars and here's me in the story. And I'm that character. And they're so awesome. They do everything right, but then they die and everybody mourns them and like it's like, okay, so all the major characters have to bow down to how cool they are. It just it's silly. It's like you have a guest writer on a TV show, and so they make it an episode that is like their director trademark, and it doesn't really fit with the rest of the series. It's just like the stuff they want to focus on. So I'm just imagining like Quentin Tarantino directs an episode of Star Trek, and it's like a Tarantino movie, and I guess his fans would like it, but the fans of Star Trek would be like, "What? What is this? What? Why? Why is it like this? This is weird. This doesn't fit. This is strange." So there's some thought that that's what's happening with some of this new Star Wars stuff. But I'll admit, I'm hard to please. I kind of gave up on the expanded universe back when it was in its heyday. So like 1997, I was already tuning out a lot of the stuff. I mean, Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight grabbed me, and I loved that game. But like the new Jedi Order stuff was really big, and a lot of people look fondly back on that series. But I mean, that was supposed to be way bigger than it was, and they cut back a lot of the books. It was a really long series. I forget now how many. It was like 27 books or something, or 17 books. But it was supposed to be a lot bigger and longer and more expansive than it was. But I don't think it was necessarily because it wasn't working. Like people weren't buying it or weren't reading it. I don't know. But I think it had more to do with the fact that prequels were coming out and they knew that George Lucas was like not going to focus on this era. It was all going to be the prequel stuff. So they wanted to focus all their energy on that, like writing books and comics to take place like, before episode 1 and between episode 1 and 2 and all this stuff. So they had like 3 novels in between each movie, stuff like that, and they had all these bridge stories. So kind of like HeroQuest, where they were making like quests in between these expansions to like promote them and so forth. There's a lot of parallels. I just feel like I know they're two completely different products. One's a board game series, a nostalgic revamping of a fantasy board game, tabletop game, HeroQuest, and Star Wars, a nostalgic rebooting of a film franchise that had ties to comic books and novels and video games. But I feel like what Avalon Hill is doing with HeroQuest is like the right way to do it. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but they're working within those boundaries of honoring the old lore, creating new lore, re-releasing the old stuff to a new audience, retaining kind of the core concepts that made it great to begin with. Changing stuff, yes, but not changing it so much that you lose the essence of it. And I mean, they're not going out of their way to try to alienate the fans either. Like, you don't see them on there like bashing fans, like, you don't know this game, you guys suck, there must be something wrong with you if you don't like what we've created and you disagree with it in any way. It's like, no, they've gone out of their way to be like, well, we won't even contradict you. We'll, leave gaps in our story on purpose so that you can fill it in yourself. It's like, wow, what a concept. Some would say maybe they're too, free that way, too open, too not willing to hammer it out. I mean, I like the fact that they're doing that because HeroQuest was always a sandbox type game and make it your own kind of thing. This is more just like ideas to get you started. I mean, for some people, the introductory quests and the basics were that's what it was. Star Wars is different because it's not a sandbox thing. I mean, yes, as little kids, like when we watched Return of the Jedi, it was like, oh, cool. I'm a Jedi running around in the woods with a stick, and that's swinging it around, and that's my lightsaber, and I'm having adventures in my backyard at the park or whatever. You didn't have the big expensive X-wing toys, but you pretended you were like flying your ship through some space maze or something. You pretended you were blasting like aliens or whatever, or you were one of the monsters like stomping on unsuspecting rebels. You had your own adventures, and the movies made you want to do that. You weren't just reliving the same story. Like when you played with your toys, it wasn't like, oh, well, Luke Skywalker can only use his blaster in these few instances because that's what he did in the movie. It's like, no, you're a kid. You have unlimited imagination. And honestly, a lot of those figures they weren't very posable anyway, so you had to use your imagination a lot to make it work. They weren't super articulated, and they didn't have sound effects and voices and lights, and it was just you made the sound effects yourself. But that's what kids do. Whereas a movie, it just presents what it presents, and that's it. It's take it or leave it. That's what it is. A game, okay, you can delve into it, you play it differently. So I realize there's that limitation, but I think if Disney had taken so many of these concepts and put them into games, like good quality games, whether that would be like board games, tabletop games, miniature games, card games, video games, and made that their focus more so than these new movies and TV shows, and just re-release the old stuff, like bring it back to theaters. I mean, yes, you could occasionally have a movie, but not just this glut of new media, like what they're doing with Disney, where just they're just remaking everything, they're just redoing everything, remixing everything, not really caring about the quality. Just it just needs to be updated. It just needs to be like modernized. It just needs to be like made relevant. Like you lose it completely in the process. So I think Disney has been doing it wrong. So it's a contrast. I think they're dealing with such huge quantities of money and influence that it's hard for them to like resist not doing that. But I think that's one of the problems. And they're just in so deep they can't. It's like they can't stop. So I don't know if Star Wars is ever going to get better until Disney is has no longer anything to do with it. And you can't blame it all on Kathleen Kennedy, but I mean, I'm sure she deserves plenty of blame. And is it the fault of the fans? Like I used to be one of those people who was like, yeah, it's the fans' fault because there's so many hardcore Star Wars fans who just worship it and just love it no matter what. and refuse to like say anything bad about it. So like even if it's terrible, they still buy it. Like Star Trek fans were like this too. Trekkies or Trekkers, they would be like, "Oh, keep Enterprise going. Let's raise money to keep the show going." It's like it's mediocre at best. It's like terrible. It's like this is the worst Star Trek that we've had on TV, unfortunately. Like worse than the worst of Voyager. And people still were trying to like support it. And just that sort of mindless fandom, like that it just doesn't work. Like most people are not that fanatical and not that loyal and not they're just buying into it. No, they're watching and going, this is a stupid show. I don't care. I don't like this product enough to actually like pay for it, you know. So then it fails. So Star Wars can't rely on that sort of like cultist mentality of some super fans. And I think HeroQuest is the same way in that yes, the super fans are going to get you to a certain point, but after a while like you can't rely on them anymore. Just like the haters, it's always the super fans and the haters. Like you can't ever win over the haters and you can't ever alienate the super fans. So it's kind of like their opinions are irrelevant. Like some people are just going to buy it no matter what, whether it's good or bad. But they're a very small minority. And the people that hate it and don't want to buy it are not going to buy it just because you changed it. So really, you got to target those people in the middle and the people who appreciate a good story or a good game, a good fun game. So if they target those people, then they could be fine. And the drawing power of the original Hero Quest, the drawing power of the original Star Wars, is a thing. And if they study that thing and understand what it is, then they can move forward into the future rather than saying, well, that thing doesn't matter. Let's just come up with something completely different. People who like the color blue are going to buy this new Star Wars. It's like, what? You have a lot of blue on screen. This is great. I love it. I'm thinking of I'm joking, but I'm almost not because some of the like I remember watching Rogue One and thinking this isn't that great, but it's got a lot of pretty stuff on screen. Like there's a lot of shiny stormtrooper armor and there's a lot of like big glowy ships and I mean it has a lot of the things that you like about Star Wars are all over the screen like all the time. But the actual like formation of the story isn't that great and I mean there's all these plot threads kind of go nowhere and I don't know, it feels just kind of pointless. And yeah, they say, "Oh, it's just a popcorn movie. Turn off your brain and just enjoy it." But I don't know, it was supposed to be something more than that. It was supposed to be something that stayed with you and kind of tapped into some universal human story, and that's not there anymore. It's just like the soul has gone out of it. Whereas the Hero Quest thing, it's like it seems like the soul is still there. So I guess that's the contrast between the two franchises. I don't know. I tried to I tried to tie them together, but that's what I got. And that's what you get on the Rantcast when you've got one person. So Strange Bus has done his solo story. I've done mine. Thanks for listening, everybody. I know we had a lot of issues with the stream. Couldn't be helped. I'm gonna have a long weekend, and the editing will probably take a while. So it'll probably just be in pieces. You'll see it here on Twitch. Eventually, I'll edit it all together into nicer single stream and put it on YouTube. And sorry about the lack of mystery guests, but um, I hope you have a great Labor Day holiday if you celebrate it where you are. And we will be doing a stream tomorrow, like I said, Friday, and future Fridays. We'll be doing 2 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on HeroQuest Fans, twitch.tv/HeroQuest Fans. We'll be doing Mage of the Mirror primarily. And then on Saturday, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturdays after that, most Saturdays, we'll be doing 6 to 10 p.m. Central Standard Time on twitch.tv/HeroQuest Fans. That's our normal time slot. We'll be doing Rise of the Dread Moon. So last time we had started Nightfall, We'll be finishing that up and then move into the first quest. After that, Ancient Waterways Within, and don't worry, we're remixing them. So if you've seen them before, like at Gen Con, it will be different. Have some changes, special modifications, and Mage of the Mirror has, of course, some changes. I mean, we're not going to do a repeat of that first quest where it was 6 hours long, 6.5 hours long. I edited it down to like under 6 hours, but that took a long, long time. So we'll do the multi-part streams again. So if we just do 2 hours or 3 hours and it's a good stopping point, we continue the next week. That's how we're going to do it, as opposed to trying to like do everything to finish it in that one, because that's just too much. And I think people get the wrong idea. They see that and they think, oh, I got to make a 6 hour commitment to enjoy this game. Forget it. That's not what we want to send. We want to say, this is open to anybody. You can play for 2 hours. You can play for 5 minutes. Doesn't matter. We'll pass on the hero to the next person. It'll be fine. You can join. You can jump in the stream. You can use the channel points, buy a potion, buy a monster. You know, we've adjusted those prices on purpose. We'll probably do it again. So you've got some people that have tons and tons of gold and some people who hardly have any. But we want it so that you can jump in, do something, leave. You don't have to stay for the entire stream if you don't want to. And then we've got the replays on YouTube. And those usually appear on a Monday. So you can watch it again. And unfortunately, we don't get as much interaction with the live chat. Like, I try to be on there, but most of the time I'm working or have something else going on. So I can't just be there like commenting. I've tried to, and I've had some fun. Like Ron Mower showed up. He's a pretty cool guy, and it's always fun to like. I like going to his streams and just saying hello or whatever, and he does the same to me, and that's cool. But a lot of times I just have to miss it. So sorry that we can't do more of that, but we keep trying to improve. And with the Rantcast, I mean, I think it works best when we do have guests because we play off of each other. I enjoy that, but it's really hard. Like Strange Bus and I have different schedules, different things going on. And this isn't our primary stream. Like, we're just trying to stay afloat with our regular stuff. So collaborative stuff, I love it, but it's hard to get it going. Like, I want to be on some other programs. I'd like to check out, you know, Always Bored, Never Boring. It would be great to do a collab with him. I would love to do another collab with Amalgamash. You know, some of these other people out there. I mean, there's a language barrier with some of us, but I mean, some of these Europeans, like, they're pretty cool. I mean, I get along great with Hispazargon, and he has some connections with some of these guys, and it's like, I'd love to get a piece of that action. Not because I somehow want to, you know, intrude on what they're doing, but just to experience that other side of the fandom. Because I mean, we have our little corner of fandom, but then there's all this universe out there that we don't get to see. And you know, it's not all about popularity. I mean, we're not the most popular group, and maybe never will be, but that's okay. It's just a place to experience the game, have fun, share your stuff, and you can be part of multiple communities. It's fine. You know, just like with Star Wars, it's like, well, they have the official community. It's like, you can be a fan wherever you want to be. You don't have to just hang out in one particular forum or Discord or whatever, Reddit group. So thank you for checking out the Rantcast. It was kind of like the Ramble cast, kind of like the disconnection cast. Am I right? But sometimes that's just how it goes. So thanks everybody for checking us out. Join us if you can tomorrow. Catch us on the replay on YouTube. Like I said, there'll be probably some delays, some lag time before the stuff actually gets posted. I can't guarantee we'll get it all done this weekend. I might have to be working on it like into next week, but eventually it will all get edited together and you'll see it on YouTube. So the Rantcast podcast on YouTube and HeroQuest fans on YouTube, XSC3 home of HeroQuest fans. All right, have a good night, and we'll see who we can raid, if anyone.